Hello and welcome to the Speech and Language Therapy Applicants Day talk. I'm Matthew Morland, the admissions lead for the programme, and despite the circumstances, I am absolutely delighted to still be able to share with you what it's going to be like if you join us in September. So in this introduction to our programme, I'm going to give a quick overview of how our programme came to be, then introduce you to the faces of our current programme team. We'll briefly cover the course structure and placements, but the big focus today will be on trying to give you a sense of what it means in a very practical way to come and study SLT at UEA. We're going to look at a first year week, a first year module, and even a first year assignment. But first, let's just take a step back and remember what it is we're aiming to do here. As a program, we exist to train speech and language therapists, equipping you with the core knowledge and skills to begin anticipating and responding to the needs of individuals with speech, language, communication, and swallowing difficulties. We're a profession with members working right the way across the lifespan and in health, education, charity, and justice sectors. If you haven't already, do take a look at the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists website and continue exploring the richness and diversity of this profession. So SLT at UEA, around about 30-ish years ago, UEA set up interprofessionally delivered occupational therapy and physiotherapy training. SLT was introduced just over 10 years later and became part of this school of allied health professions. The first SLT cohort started in 2004, graduating in 2007. Around 2012, the school was rebadged as the School of Rehabilitation Sciences, but alongside had been the School of Nursing and Midwifery, originally located at Helsden Hospital in Norwich, but it moved sometime around 15 years ago to the Edith Cavell building next door to the N&N, which is the hospital adjacent to the UEA campus. In 2014, we merged to become the School of Health Sciences, split across the Edith Cavell building and the Queen's building, which houses most of the therapies staff and our SLT areas. We consequently are the largest school at UEA, training 10 health professions, 4 fields of nursing, the 3 therapies, and midwifery, paramedic science, and operating department practice. And so our program benefits from expertise right the way from across the school. So this is our team as it stands today. Going clockwise from the course director, we have Jenny, Neil, Karen, Emma, Christina, Sarah, Tammy, Kirsty, me, Zoe, Jan, and Meg. We have a number of clinically qualified staff members with different areas of expertise. These staff are supplemented by subject specialists in linguistics, phonetics, and psychology. I straddle the two, being clinically qualified, but first and foremost a lecturer in phonetics. Many of our staff are also part-time to different degrees. Tammy is with us 1 day a week, working the rest in clinical practice. Emma, who is our placements lead, also runs a private speech and language therapy company. And I'm with UEA 3 days a week, my remaining week spent as a freelance pronunciations editor for the Oxford English Dictionary. But alongside these core team members, we have our experts by experience, sometimes called service users, who are involved in various ways throughout the programme. Some are conversation partners for our first year placement. Some come and give their experiences as part of timetabled teaching. We also make great use of the local clinical expertise for some of your timetabled teaching on particular areas. So how are our programs structured? Well, by now you've probably heard of our problem-based learning curriculum. This isn't something we've just bolted on to an existing program. Our course has been completely designed in this way. It's a particular approach to learning, where in groups you will be given problems to solve that relate to the client group you're studying at the time. The problems can be anything: a referral letter, some assessment data, a video clip, a case report. And in your group, you unpick as much as you can. From there, you come up with questions that become your group's learning objectives for the week, which your lectures, seminars, and independent study will help you to explore. The problems, which we call triggers, will encourage you to address all the different academic areas, so everything is contextualized and integrated. Once you've researched your particular objective, you share it and read the reports from others in your group. We then give you an hour at the start of the next week to consider what your newfound knowledge means for us as SLTs. It's collaborative learning through those conversations. Why do we do it? Well, there's great evidence behind the concept of problem-based learning as a curriculum, and some of the major benefits come in terms of the transferable skills you gain. You will learn how to chair meetings, how to work in this sort of professional team, and be constantly applying the knowledge that you acquire. We know that it prepares students really well for both placement and for their future careers. So what is it that we're integrating? Well, every SLT program covers the same core ground, just in different ways and with different emphases. On our program at UEA, we take each of these areas and slot them into appropriate points for each of the client groups we introduce you to. Whether you've applied for the 3-year BSc or the 4-year MSci, you'll be joining us for extended academic years. Our students typically start in the last week of September and finish in the first half of July. We do this so that, all being well, you can complete the required learning and assessment to meet the July graduations in your final year. The first module we'll do with you is simply called Foundations, and it runs up until Christmas of year 1. This is a leveling of the playing field, since some of you will have come with strong science backgrounds, others strong language backgrounds, others psychology or health and social care or something else. So your problem-based learning triggers will get you to consider some core concepts from the underpinning fields. After Christmas, our core clinical content is delivered in modules according to client groups. So we begin by looking at cluttering and stuttering, then move on to speech and language development and explore what it looks like when that doesn't follow a typical trajectory. In year 2, we consider deafness and hearing impairment, and then learning difficulties, where we consider areas such as autism. The big module in year 2 starts after Christmas, where you explore acquired language and communication disorders, looking at strokes, brain injuries, and dementia. In autumn of year 3, we tackle motor speech disorders such as Parkinson's and motor neurone diseases, and look at the nature of swallowing difficulties. Our final module, just before Christmas, is exploring the disorders of the voice and vocal tract, as well as discussing implications of head and neck cancers. Of course, alongside all this, you have your practice education modules, which is where placements sit with the direct preparation and support for those. You also have professionalism and employability, which in year 1 is the strand you take with the occupational therapy and physiotherapy students. And over years 2 and 3, you have your research strand, which in year 2 forms another module shared with the OT and PT students. And for just a few hours in each of your first 2 years, we schedule wider interprofessional learning opportunities. You will meet and work with students from a range of other professional programs that we train here at UEA to begin to understand how we are not an SLT silo, but very much part of this bigger world of professionals working together. We will assess you throughout the year rather than in big end-of-year exams, and use a range of different methods to do this. Our big focus for placements is 2 8-week clinical blocks in years 2 and 3, one with adults and one with children, where you will be out there doing the job for 4 days a week, plus a day for independent study. Our block placements are spread across an increasingly wide area, from our traditional core of Norfolk, Suffolk and Cambridgeshire, spreading into neighbouring counties and even as far south as London. So do be prepared that placements may require significant travel or staying in different accommodation. Please do get in touch with us if you have any questions or concerns about that. We will give you some introductory placement days at the start of year 2. But in year 1, we get you ready for clinical placements by having you focus on your rapport building and communication skills. From your first term, we will assign you a conversation partner, though several of you may have the same partner, who will become someone that you meet with on about an hour a week during term time. And it'll be someone who's had some kind of acquired language or communication difficulty, perhaps a stroke. You're not there to assess them or to do therapy with them as such, but you're there to give them someone to interact with, someone who cares and wants to understand them. With support from workshops with lecturers, we will get you to consider all the different aspects of communication and consider them in light of your interactions with your conversation partner. We have you do similar in some days at the end of year 1 spent with children aged from anywhere from 3 to 8, thinking about how you can adapt your communication appropriately for their ability and stage of development. We do this so that you build up confidence in those fundamental communication and rapport building skills so that you can hit the ground running with your clinical knowledge integration in your second year placements. In our building, we have our dedicated skills area, more informally called the lab, and our resources room with all manner of different assessments and therapy tools to explore. For those of you who are holding offers for our MSci, which has now been formally approved by the Health and Care Professions Council, so will be running as planned from September this year, a reminder of how that works. Years 1 and 2 are no different from the BSc, but in year 3, subject to satisfactory completion of the first 2 years, you complete a developing research module and complete your dissertation in year 4, alongside an elective placement and modules from our 3 pathways: research, leadership, and/or education. So let's think a little bit about how your working week might look. Now, although there are subtle ways that this changes from year to year, here's an example from a recent first year timetable. I've taken week 7 of the autumn term. Mondays and Thursdays are the core lecture days in year 1. So on the Monday, you start your week with the discussion from the week 6 learning, from your trigger from last week, and then you get introduced to your new trigger. In this particular week of Foundations, there was a lecture on semantics by our linguistic specialist, and then a lecture on the SLT intervention process. After lunch, another semantics-based lecture before some half-group sized seminars on phonetic transcription, either in the 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. group or the 4 till 5. Tuesday is our independent study day in year 1, so you may choose to visit your conversation partner or head to the library or make use of the clinical skills rooms, likely researching your learning objective for the problem-based learning. Wednesday is our shared morning with OT and PT, and this morning was a class on sustainability in healthcare from one of the occupational therapy lecturers. Wednesday afternoons are usually set aside for extracurricular societies, but this was the one in that first year that we had set aside for the interprofessional learning session I mentioned earlier. Thursday began with lectures and split group seminars from our resident psychologist Meg on the topic of attention, while after lunch was another of our SLT staff, Karen, talking about discourse and pragmatics through a lecture and some practicals. Friday had workshops very much relating to the conversation partners placement before an optional peer-assisted learning opportunity where you can meet with trained students from higher years to ask questions and have things explained in a slightly different way. Friday afternoon is another time of independent study. Years 2 and 3 look fairly similar, just the days that you are expected to be around change slightly. So most of the teaching in years 2 and 3 currently takes place on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So let's look at a typical module, in this case, disorders of fluency. So let's start off by populating our 5 weeks of this module with the PBL trigger and discussion sessions. Each is about a different person, and as a reading week follows this module, to consolidate your learning, we don't schedule lectures in those reading weeks, so we have a whole group plenary on that Friday. Let's add our introduction to the module and its assessment, and then some ages and stages and lifespan development sessions. And these give context as we go from children to adults throughout the module and set the scene for the next module, speech and language development and disorder. On the first day of the module, we also jump straight in with stuttering and its causes. And we think a bit about with a brief introduction to how we go about assessing people who may have a stutter and how we go about making clinical decisions using that information. You'll also notice that there are different colors appearing. Green means that they are more linguistics focused sessions. Orange means they're more about SLT practice. We finish the first day with our blue phonetic sessions in 2 groups, each having an hour-long seminar on phonetic transcription. The Thursday begins with our biology morning, looking at neuroanatomy, biological factors in stuttering, and then looking at genetics and studies which suggest the extent to which stuttering may have a genetic component. In the afternoon, we focus on the core features of stuttering from a phonetic perspective, looking at the common units of sound involved and just what a syllable is. The following Monday, we look at risk factors for stuttering, and then we take a step back to consider the broader concept of fluency and how everyday speech is rarely truly fluent. So where do we draw the line as to what's a clinical disfluency? The afternoon looks at fluency assessment methods in more detail before split group seminars on how we can get to grips with journal articles on fluency disorders and start to use that sort of evidence in writing about them. The Thursday is when you would submit a formative assignment, a 2-page individual profile, which I'll touch on again in a moment. You have sessions introducing interventions for children who stammer, and then the first of the psychology-focused sessions on attachment. The afternoon is more about the patterning of syllables in English, and then there's seminars on the next set of sounds for transcription practice. Week 15 is more psychology on self-concept and theories of learning, plus various factors that potentially help or hinder fluency. There's another session on techniques to treat fluency disorders and another set of practical phonetics seminars. There's then the first of 2 visits from service users who come to share their experiences and ground in the real lives, living the experiences of the theory that you'll have been studying. The second of those takes place on the Monday of week 16. And on the Monday of week 16, we also have another of our sessions on intervention techniques. The main focus of this week, though, is on a different type of fluency disorder from the stammering that you'll have focused on so far, and this is called cluttering. And the technical aspects are explored further in a session on speaking rate and co-articulation, and another session in week 17 on connected speech. Relevant to all fluency disorders are the concepts of emotion and identity. And there's a formative test to prepare for, in phonetics, to prepare for your summatives, which will be coming up, although this is changing for next year because your summatives will all be moved in phonetics towards the end of the academic year rather than being spread out across them. In week 17, we invite practicing clinicians in the field of fluency to give you a real insight into how they do what they do. One comes and shows you how they do things like syllable counting and severity ratings, some of the more technical parts of assessment, and how fluency care pathways work to ensure there is a clear procedure for the referrals, assessment, intervention, and discharge. Another comes to talk about working with adults and how they practically apply some of the therapy approaches you'll have been introduced to, with examples from her current practice. But that, in a nutshell, is the module. 5 weeks, 2 days each week, really intense, but also a great deal of fun, a great deal of variation, and a lot of different things all being integrated into understanding these stuttering and cluttering fluency disorders. Now, this then all builds up towards the assignment that you'd have for this module, and this is our fluency disorders assignment. What you'll be given is a case history with family details, medical and developmental history, and a communication history. You'll be given an excerpt from the SLT's notes on the initial interview and some speech ratings, for example, severity ratings and percentage of syllables stuttered. You'll also be given a short passage of phonetically transcribed speech as examples of the sorts of behaviours that the individual was demonstrating. And what you're asked to do with this is to put together in the first instance an individual profile, which is structured to ensure that we addressed not just the structure and functioning of an individual's body, but also how they participate in their world and what assets and barriers there may be in their environment too. Then we ask you to refer to the most salient psychological, phonological, linguistic, developmental, and biological aspects of the case data for an SLT to be weighing in on and weighing up before comparing suitable types of intervention. Now, you ultimately submit parts 2 and 3 as your 1,500-word essay and your part 1 as your appendix. But that's really what we're trying to get you to be able to do, is understand how this is all related, all these different areas, and bring to bear your knowledge in considering some case data. Now, I just want to flag, in case you're not familiar with this, that actually you may have heard about the new grants being offered to healthcare students from September. We can confirm it does apply to speech and language therapy students. Do please keep an eye on the NHS Health Careers website for more details. There are also additional forms of support available. Do take a look at those if you haven't already done so. The NHS BSA is maintaining the Learning Support Fund, which is particularly useful, particularly around our travel and accommodation costs to clinical placements. But hey, this is pretty much it from me for now. But I thought I'd finish with a picture of some of our recent students spending time together. The way our program works, we really do get invested in you as an individual. We love training our colleagues of the future and hope you'll enjoy what we have to offer. We're delighted that you've considered UEA. Please do get in touch with us with any questions. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and we hope to be welcoming you soon.